You're listening to Closing Market Weekly, the show where real estate closings meet real world insight. With your host, Phillip Hogan. And every week we break down the trends, tools, and the timing that keeps deals moving forward. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Phillip Hogan, the host to Closing Market Weekly and the CEO to Signing Services of America. And also I'll soon be a published author. And my book is Relentless Excellence, a story of family, business building, and value-driven leadership. And the inspiration to write this book has really come from the experiences that I've acquired from working with my parents and their businesses and also in my businesses. And of course, I couldn't have accomplished anything that I have within, I guess, for my life, and particularly the business, if it weren't for my parents. And my father was a very driven, both of my parents were very driven individuals. And they made the supreme sacrifices to start a business and thus build it. And my father was a person who was pretty much the visionaire, and he went out, so like, and created the opportunities. And then my mom, in my book I talk about her role, and I hope that you'll go to our website, which is philliphogan.com. That's PHILLIP.com. And learn a little bit more about my businesses, and just read an excerpt from the book. And of course, go to and register to get a copy once the book has been launched. And my mom played a really major role. And I think that if it wasn't for, I wonder, you know, if if one person, if either my father or my mother was not an entrepreneur, would they have been as successful? But when you grew up in a household, I grew up in a household where both of my parents were entrepreneurs, and they both had a very active role in building their businesses. And it was, at the time, I didn't understand it, and it took a long time for me to really grasp what it is that what opportunities I had, and how much I benefited from those opportunities, and to see these individuals really sacrifice themselves and a lot of other things to build successful businesses. And one of the things that I've acquired when it comes to building my businesses is the ability to make the supreme sacrifice. You realize that, okay, you know what? Maybe today I'm not going to be able to go out. Maybe today I'm not going to be able to, spend some time with my friends. Maybe today I'm not going to be able to, have some time with the family, because I saw it was embedded in me by growing up in the business and working with my parents on their businesses, that these were the sacrifices that they made, and they made them very comfortably. No one really, kind of like disputed. There was never a moment of, my parents arguing, well, I'm not going to do this, or you need to do that. They had their very established roles, and I never saw them actually contesting what one role was versus the other. It was sort of like expected and accepted that, okay, this is the way it was. And thus there was unison between the two of them. And it was like unbelievable to see how smoothly they operated in their businesses. And I was, I had a ringside seat. And so one of the things that I learned from my father is a value that I have today in all of my businesses. And that's really the value of being a proactive communicator, right? Not only being a proactive communicator, but thinking along the lines of being proactive, and thus executing those proactive thoughts, right? And what I mean by being proactive, well, what I witnessed my father do is, rather than wait for things to go awry in the business, anticipate what can happen, and thus apply a strategy to prevent it from happening, right? And that's the proactive communication, or proactive thinking, and thus being proactive communicator. And so my father, I saw him do this time in and time out, right? And I didn't understand. It was more, when he was training me, it was more like, these are the instructions I'm getting from my parent, right? And then as children, what at least what I was trained to do is, like, when your parents speak, you listen. When your parents say do, what you do. And so, there was a fine line between where the roles constantly stopped and started, where the role from a son stopped and an employee started. And many times there was a lot of blending on the road. And guess who benefited from it the most? I did, right? Because here I am at 68, God willing, and I've had two successful businesses, and I've had a life of being an entrepreneur, and so the sacrifices that I've had to make as an entrepreneur were embedded in me by working with my parents and seeing how they gave themselves to their businesses and how we all benefited from it. And benefiting doesn't necessarily mean in a monetary way. Benefit means that, we were able to enjoy one another's successes in many different ways. And so the proactive communicating and the proactive thinking is really a powerful way to, I think, apply. It's a powerful way to look at what's the best approach to handling a situation within your business. Do you wait for situations to go? Do you wait for situations to go wrong, and then you have to, have to, pull the alarm, pull the emergency alarm for people to come together and figure out, oh gosh, this is what we got to do, or do you sort of like sit and think through what is that you want to do, or think through what is it that your business is doing, and see if there's any potential pitfalls or some potential blind spots, and thus, mitigate those blind spots or pitfalls so that you don't have any moments of catastrophe, you know and certainly in a service based business, being a proactive communicator and being a proactive thinker has been astronomically successful for us, because your clients are looking for you to not only provide a product or provide a service, but more so be able to be a a collaborative partner in helping to accomplish the goal or the purpose of my company, Signing Services America, working with our clients to fulfill the request that their clients have placed upon them. And so, our clients are constantly looking for us to, be a active participant in that relationship. And it requires us to, Sign Service America, to really kind of like look at things very differently and understand what it is that's expected of us and thus fulfill. And so proactive communicating, proactive thinking is a big part of the relationship that we have with our clients. And I never knew anything about that until I never until working with working with my father. And again, you can go to my website, philliphogan.com. That's phillip.com, and read through the website. There's an excerpt from my book. Please read it. And we invite you to subscribe to receive an announcement as to when the book will be published, and thus purchase it and read it through its entirety. I think that it's an easy read, but I think it's a very informative book, and it gives you a tremendous amount of insight in terms as to me, the businesses that my family has had, and my parents, and the successes, not so much the successes as man and woman, husband, wife, but the third layer of their relationship, which were business owners, right? And I think that's a really a phenomenal relationship. And I learned a lot from it, and I'm sharing what I've learned with you, both on my podcast as well as into the book. So until we come together again, if you haven't talked about us to your friends and family and colleagues, please invite them to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And if you are a part of our listening audience, thank you for following us, and please continue to. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to the Closing Market Weekly. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone in the industry. For more insights from the front lines of real estate closings, we'll see you next week.